Greetings from Monona House in Combermere, where I, like so many of you, am living my life in lockdown. I was asked to say a word about the feast of St. Joseph the Worker, May 1st. This is the day I'm recording this message. And I was really struck by the fact that, this is such an unusual time that we're living through. Have we ever experienced a time in the history of the human race when so few of us have been working? When squares of great cities are empty and churches and basilicas all around the world are locked. So what I thought I'd do instead was talk briefly about surviving and thriving during a pandemic, keeping the faith during a pandemic. And what came to me actually were the words of C.S. Lewis, who said once that God whispers to us in our pleasures, He speaks to us in our conscience, but He shouts to us in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. I think also of those words of Flannery O'Connor explaining why in her short stories, grace always comes through violence. She said, to those who have hard of hearing, you shout. And to the nearly blind, you write in large and startling figures. Well, God speaks to each one of us through events, people, and circumstances. So, of course, it begs the question for all of us, what is God saying to me in this time of totally unexpected circumstances in this worldwide pandemic? And I guess the word that came to me in terms of surviving and thriving and keeping the faith during a global pandemic, the word that came to me was create. You might ask, create what? And what comes to mind is to create things that are true, good, and beautiful. You've heard that line, I'm sure, before from one of Dostoevsky's characters, Beauty Will Save the World. When Alexander Solzhenitsyn gave his acceptance speech for the Nobel Prize for Literature, he talked about that saying of Dostoevsky, and he said it wasn't just a throwaway line, it was a prophecy, he said. And he's really talking about the power of beauty and goodness and truth to really change people. And I'm convinced that this time, this free time that so many of us have, not all of us, but many of us, have during this time of pandemic, is a real opportunity to create something true, good, or beautiful. And you might ask, what do I mean by that? I don't mean creating something like Lord of the Rings, or the Narnia Chronicles, or the Divine Comedy. But I think of artists or people who have, in small ways, done things that have brought beauty or goodness or truth to the world. I think of a young Newfoundland songwriter, a praise and worship songwriter, who wrote a song called Lord, I Need You. I don't think he ever expected that he would be performing that song in front of the Pope and 3 million Catholics, but that's exactly what Matt Maher did at World Youth Day in 2013. I think of a woman born in the Bronx, a very devout Catholic woman who saw her first short story rejected by 40 different magazines and went on to write 51 novels that sold over 100 million copies. That's what Mary Higgins Clark did. I think of a young prairie boy being raised in the Depression who was rejected by his father and many of his siblings because he couldn't do farm work and because he was constantly drawing. Well, the young man grew up to become, by the time of his death in 1977, Canada's most popular artist outside of Canada, and that was William Kurelic. I happened to live in the country home in Combermere that he spent his summers in, and we have a table that's covered with paint that escaped from his paintings. And I often think of how much beauty and how much joy his paintings brought to so many people. His paintings can be found in museums around the world, even in the collection of the Queen of England. To bring goodness, truth, and beauty to people, to create, is something that all of us can do, especially when we're given the gift of the free time that we have. And I believe that God has given us this time to do something. You probably heard it said before, those words of Catherine Doherty, how do you know what your vocation is? To which she answered, you ask yourself what you want to do, You ask yourself what you can do, and then you follow the wings of your intellect, and you ask what God wants you to do. I believe that finding out what you really want to do, what is it that drives you, just like songwriting drives Matt Maher, like mystery writing drove Mary Higgins Clark, like painting drove William Crowley. Find out what drives you, and find out if you can put whatever it is that drives you to the service of goodness, beauty, and truth. Because if you can, you can survive and thrive in this time of global pandemic. And you can keep the faith and spread the faith during this time. God bless you all.